Does anyone have a shoulder or a pillow I can cry on? I could really use one. Good things just don't last, do they? To think that I'd be bringing this up right after my Gumball recap. Your eyes aren't messing with you, ladies and gentlemen. What you're looking at is an actual tweet made by Ben Bokale a couple of days ago. It ain't photoshopped or anything. This is the real deal. The amazing world of Gumball is coming to an end after its 6th season. To say that I'm heartbroken, that I'm devastated, that I'm absolutely bitter, it's not enough. I suppose I should do a bit of a reflection as to why this series is so important to Cartoon Network and why I hold it in such high regard. Anyone who's been around the block for quite some time now should know that Cartoon Network suffered a massive network decay starting from the mid-2000s. It was around that time that proverbial passing of the torch was happening within the network, with the pioneers that made the network into what it is being succeeded by a whole slew of fresh new faces. And the shows that started it all, the cartoons, Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken and I Am Weasel, the Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Mike Luenog, Sheep in the Big City, Time Squad, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Manny, which was originally Grim and Evil, codenamed Kids Next Door. They were all coming to an end or had already come to an end, with the longest running show from that lineup being Ed, Edd and Eddy, coming to an end in November of 2009. So that show enjoyed a 10-year run, which is currently the longest that a Cartoon Network series has been on air for, and I don't think that that's going to be a record that'll be broken anytime soon, if at all, really. And when that show came to an end, that marked the end of an era, and a pretty damn long era at that. But despite the end of that era, like many have said plenty of times, I'm sure, Cartoon Network had actually undergone its derailment way before that, so I'd say around late 2005 or 2006. Actually, it might have begun much earlier than that, when production of all the Cartoon Network series moved from Hanna-Barbera to Cartoon Network Studios after Hanna-Barbera closed their doors in 2001. Back then, this wasn't that noticeable since the views were coming in by the hundreds of thousands and even millions, and the revenue that the network was making, whether from advertisement or merchandising, was piling up like no tomorrow, and the reception for the shows that were on at the time were mostly positive from both critics and viewers alike. Although we were starting to see signs of this when the decision was made to continue some cartoon titles despite the fact that their respective creators have already left. So yes, even though SpongeBob and the Fairly Odd Parents are two primary victims of seasonal rot as far as children's or families' animation goes, they certainly aren't the first to experience a sharp decline in quality over the years. Seriously, Chris Savino, you suck. You suck for doing what you did to the Powerpuff Girls in Dexter's Lab. Nah, I'm only joking. I love you, Chris, especially now that you've given us the Loud House. The derailment that Cartoon Network went through could be compared to the 4 stages of cancer. Now, I might be getting a lot of flack for this because this kind of comparison is easy to make and is kind of tasteless depending on the person, but hear me out because I want to get this out there. So stage 0 would be when the cancer sets into place, and in the case of Cartoon Network, it could be when Hanna-Barbera closed its doors and production moved over to Cartoon Network Studios. And after that is stage 1, which is when the cancer moves to a designated part of the human body, and in regards to Cartoon Network, the significant effects of the shift in production studios has now found itself in the overall quality of the products themselves. Compared to earlier seasons, I doubt that even the most devout of fans can find anything memorable about the later seasons of the cartoon shows. Well, there could be one or two, but they pale in comparison to the number of memorable moments from the earlier seasons. I actually want to give you guys a challenge. Tell me in the comments section below what moments in the later seasons of these cartoon shows you remember fondly. And by fondly, I don't mean that you just remember it for the sake of remembering it, but when you first watched it, it's left a lasting impression on you. Mine would have to be the Season 6 Powerpuff Girls episode Aspirations. I really like what that episode did to Sedusa, and I really like what it did to the Gangrene Gang even more. Sedusa is a much bigger threat than she was in her previous 2 appearances in the series, and the Gangrene Gang are actually a credible threat for once in their lives. So, moving on, stages 2 and 3 are when the cancer cells have reached an advanced state, and in regards to Cartoon Network, it's not only ongoing current series that are being affected, now new upcoming series are being affected too. Apart from a few gems here and there, the Cartoon Network original series of that time were nothing to write home about. They weren't bad per se. At best, I'd say they're mediocre, but they just didn't have that kick, that edge, that daringness that the cartoons were known for. They didn't push the same boundaries that the cartoons pushed, if they pushed any boundaries at all. They were playing it safe for the most part. A portion of it probably has something to do with the growing spread of that stupid political correctness bullshit. But perhaps the most unfortunate part of all this is that they aired during the time when the network decay really started to kick in. And now we get to stage 4, which is where the cancer has developed so much and spread so far that it's practically impossible to cure it now. And as far as Cartoon Network goes, this is the beginning of the quote-unquote dark ages for the network. It can be summed up in 2 words. Live action. Live action programming on a cartoon channel. If that idea sounds inhumanly stupid, it's because it is. And you have one person to blame for that. This jackass right here. Meet Stuart Snyder, former executive vice president of Cartoon Network and former president and chief operating officer of the animation division of Turner Entertainment. If there was a contest between MTV and 2009 Cartoon Network to see which of the 2 channels derailed more, MTV wins. But not without 2009 Cartoon Network giving it a run for its money. I mean, wow! What the hell is this? I mean, out of Jimmy's head? Destroy, build, destroy, dude, what would happen? Level up? Incredible crew? What is this bullshit? And I'm being 100% serious. What is this bullshit? This is not Cartoon Network. This is a poor man's Nickelodeon / Disney Channel, and it sure as hell doesn't belong here. Okay, I'm calming down. But, wow! What happened? Sorry, Stuart Snyder, but your expertise over at Feld Entertainment, Sinar, and WWE don't mean a damn thing when it comes to running a cartoon channel! So as you'd expect, the ratings plummeted, and the remaining Cartoon Network alumni who stayed behind for the ride left the channel because they couldn't take another second of being in the same room as this incompetent douchebag. I don't blame them. If the highest of the higher-ups cancels a programming block because of his claim that anime doesn't fit into his vision, then it's a pretty shitty vision to begin with. So with all my ranting about how Cartoon Network went completely batshit off the rails, where does Gumball come into the picture? I'm gonna tell you exactly where. Gumball is one of the 3 Cartoon Network original series that saved the network from its own undoing, the other 2 being Adventure Time and Regular Show. These 3 shows marked the end of Cartoon Network's dark ages and the beginning of a promising new generation. And this generation could not have started at a better time, with political correctness being much less stricter than it was in the mid-2000s, which could explain why these 3 shows and all other cartoon shows in between get away with so much nowadays. This effectively kills multiple birds with one stone. It makes up for the lack of risk-taking in the mid-2000s, and it sure as hell makes up for the live-action idiocy. Stupid Stuart Snyder. Stupid CN Real. You suck. Okay, it's out of my system. So, as I was saying, Say what you will about the programming back in the mid-2000s. Hey, at least cartoons were still the focus back then. Besides being pretty much a savior for Cartoon Network, this series is also important in other ways too. It's important in that this is the first series that's commissioned from Cartoon Network Development Studios Europe, and given the track record that this series has had ever since it premiered back in May of 2011, this could mean we can see more great things from the good, hardworking folks over there. The series is also important to Ben Bocquelet himself, who's pitched it many times in the past. If you can believe it, one of the networks that he pitched it to was Nickelodeon, and that pitch had some pretty questionable decisions behind them, such as giving Penny a gun. Yeah. Think about that for a second. This series is also important in that it's basically an amalgamation of Ben's past failed endeavors in the field of advertisement. So, more or less all of the characters in this series, from Tobias to Banana Joe to Tina Rex to William to Juke to Bobbert to Principal Brown to Miss Simeon to Rocky to Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, to Hector, to even Gumball himself, as well as his family. They were at one point commercial mascots that Ben himself created, and were pitched as well, and were also rejected time and time again. And for them to finally come into the light, to finally get that moment under the limelight, it must be a fulfilling moment for Ben Bocquelet. After all those years of perseverance, after one pitch after another, one rejection after another, after all this time of sticking to his guns, Ben has now found himself where he wants to be, and that's commendable. That kind of Cinderella story is always commendable. And to drive that point home of how big a deal this show is, Cartoon Network advertises the shit out of it. I mean, we're talking a sneak peek 6 days before the actual premiere, which could be found not just on the main channel, but also on its website and on Boomerang. Boomerang! That is crazy. And that's not even going into the rest of the promotional campaign that Cartoon Network had planned out. So to put it simply, Cartoon Network had the same amount of faith in the show that the production crew had. And I'd say it definitely paid off, wouldn't you? Now, as is typical when the announcement that the plug was going to be pulled on a long-running series, everyone across the internet was up in arms. They started crying foul. They started making claims that, it's the Dark Ages all over again, or, Cartoon Network is going back down the shitter, or, Cartoon Network, how could you? This is an absolutely asinine move, you bunch of stupid morons. And I'd like to kindly ask those people to stop. Please stop. First of all, it was Ben Bocquelet who made the decision in the first place, not Cartoon Network. And turning Cartoon Network into a group of pariahs is not going to help anything or anyone. It's pretty damn obvious that Ben wants to end the show on his terms at the right time. And I can respect that, just like I respect J.G. Quintel for giving regular show a proper closure. In the words of Harvey Dent, you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Which in an animation context translates into you either come to an end an Avatar or continue long enough to become a SpongeBob. 6 seasons within a 6 to 8 time frame is a solid run. I love Gumball a lot, okay? And I love it to the point where I don't want to see it go downhill. I love it to the point where I want it to come to an end on a dignified and high note. Think about it. Do you really want Gumball to turn into SpongeBob 2.0? And when Gumball does come to an end, I have all the confidence in the world that its successor will be more than capable of filling in the shoes. So it's so far-fetched to see these claims that Cartoon Network might actually be regressing back to its dark ages. Do you really think Cartoon Network is stupid enough to bring back live-action programming? let's be realistic here, people. I guess I can make up for my sort of defeatist approach by providing you guys with a glimmer of hope. Now, no offense to Ben Beauclair, he's a cool person and all. He did reply to me on Twitter when I said to him that he deserves an Amazing World of Gumball panel at San Diego Comic-Con. But, his English is a little on the finicky side. If you watch a few interviews that he was a part of, you'll find that, yeah, he can speak English just fine. It's just that when it comes to writing or typing it, that's where it gets a little iffy. So in one tweet, he'll say that Gumball will be coming to an end, and in another he'll say that he's gonna leave the show, but it's not necessarily gonna mean the end for Gumball. So what is it, dude? If Gumball does continue after Ben has left, then the one person who deserves to be executive producer in his place is Mike Graves. No questions asked. Mike Graves should be the next executive producer after Ben Beauclair has left the crew. That is, if Gumball continues. Who knows? It's all up in the air. Regardless of whether Gumball does or doesn't come to an end, one thing is for certain. Ben Beauclair has cemented himself as a household name in animation. His skills as a cartoonist have captivated me and millions of others the world over. Whether it's through the storytelling, the characters, the animation, or the music, I can say from the bottom of my heart that Ben Beauclair's name is a certified seal of quality. And whatever his next project might be, he has my undying support. Let's give a round of applause for Ben Beauclair, everybody. I'm the one and only C.R. Martin. Ciao for now.